Welcome back to Questing Beast, I'm Ben. Today we're taking a look at one of the more unusual books in my collection. This is an adventure game book of a kind called Parsley, created by Jared A. Sorensen, who's created a lot of very influential indie RPGs in the past. What's fascinating about this is that it is, well, it's not really an RPG, although it is very similar to some games in the past that were modeled off of them. That's because this is a replication of what you might call the old text-based adventure games. You know, the old games like Zork or Colossal Cave that are entirely based off of writing, where the computer will tell you where you are and what's going on, and you simply type in commands like pick up sword, go west, hit the goblin, and then the computer tells you via a script that the creator has written out ahead of time what happens when you do that. What's so fascinating about this book is it takes that format, which is typically a solo thing that you do, right? You're just sitting at your computer typing, and turns it into a party game. In effect, this is a kind of role-playing game that you can pick up and play on the fly with any number of people. You can play this with a room full of people. I think you can play it with an auditorium full of people if you wanted to. When these old text-based adventure games were first created, the goal was to kind of replicate Dungeons & Dragons, but replace the game master with a computer. And this flips that on its head because if you're holding the book, you're the game master, but now you are playing the computer. Let's dig into the book and see how it works. But first, a reminder that there is a giveaway going on my channel right now, where one lucky person subscribed to the Questing Beast newsletter will win a copy of 28 Collected, this beautiful hardback book investigating the indie underground scene of the Grimdark in the Warhammer and the 40K universes. It's full of spectacular artwork and design from this online community, and all you have to do to be in the running is put in your email into the newsletter, link in the description down below. So how does Parsley work? By the way, it's called Parsley because you, the game master or the runner, are acting as the text parser, which is the program in these old text adventures that would try to understand what the players were saying and interpret that into a game command. Your role is very similar to a game master in D&D, but it's much more script-based, where you simply describe using text that is given to you where the player is at the beginning, and then the players all take turns inputting commands. These are usually two-word commands like get sword or go north or something like that. In theory, it could be a bit more complex, like give the spyglass to the sailor. Things like that would still work out okay. One of the reasons why I wouldn't count this as a typical role-playing game is it doesn't really have tactical infinity. It doesn't have an infinite number of things you can do because you're working as a computer, and so there is a strict number of things that they can try, and there's a limited number of ways that they can reach success. In that sense, it's more like a puzzle game or like an escape room than it is like D&D. One issue is that if the players are relatively young and they haven't played text-based adventure games before, they may not know some of the things that players of those games would assume. For example, you can type in things, or at least declare as a player, declare things like inventory or save or load. And the game master, who's the parser here, would actually follow those things out. Like if they say inventory, you list out what's in their inventory. If they say save, then they have saved the game state. So if they die, you can reload, so to speak, back at that place. I like some of the advice here where it says to be cruel but fair. Remember, you are not a human being trying to negotiate things out with the players as you would be if you were a game master. You're a computer with a limited number of things to say, all of which are pre-programmed. So you have a certain attitude that you should use when playing the game that you wouldn't use as a game master. The puzzles in these games were often annoying but logical, and the parser was simple but reliable. Don't coddle the players by allowing sloppy grammar, complex commands, or dumb jokes. Respond the way a sarcastic computer would. If the player issues a proper command but at the wrong time, give them a clue. This is a lot of fun when you're playing the parser, because unlike the role of most game masters, you have a built-in character that you're trying to portray. It says right here, most of the comedy actually comes from the players. Their expectations colliding with your results generate a lot of humor. You don't have to wink at the crowd, tell jokes, or clown around. Just listen to what a player says to you. If there's any room for misunderstanding, irony, or humor, take advantage of it. In my experience, gestures, funny voices, and sound effects go a long way to making the game come alive. That's definitely been my experience running this. The players will sort of make their own entertainment as they try and figure out these weird and obscure puzzles, and then be stumped at it for a while, and then try a whole bunch of different things, and then laugh when they figure out what they're supposed to do. As an example, let me show you how the first adventure works, Action Castle. But first, a shout out to today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Into the AM. Into the AM has become my favorite brand when it comes to comfort and durability, and now they're putting some of their coolest graphic designs onto their long sleeve t-shirts and their hoodies, which is perfect for the upcoming fall weather. Whether you're running a fantasy or a sci-fi or horror campaign, you'll be able to find designs that fit the theme and look awesome to boot. Check out my link in the description below and you'll be able to get 10% off of their entire web store, including shirts like this one, which has a cosmic glow-in-the-dark octopus. Big thanks to Into the AM for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to it. So this is the first adventure, and there's a bunch of adventures in this book that you can run. They all start out with their own map right here, which you as the game master will have access to, but the players won't. A smart player will get a little piece of paper and maybe start sketching their own map as they go. It'll make it much easier to navigate. Here's how the adventures are formatted. It's very smart. It's definitely geared towards being easy to use on the fly. The cottage is the starting location, so you simply read out to everyone gathered there. You are standing in a small cottage. There is a fishing pole here. A door leads outside. I usually add that exits are out. The first player can issue a command. They might say something like, examine room. Now, there isn't any result given here for examining the room, so you can make something up, although you have to be careful not to give players too much information where they think that there's something they're supposed to interact with there, because there really isn't besides the fishing pole. So you would give something very simple and just say, it's a simple stone cottage. There's a fishing pole here, reiterating what's said before. If the next player says, pick up fishing pole, you just say, you have a fishing pole. If the player wants to do something that's impossible or very unlikely, like they want to punch a hole in the stone wall, you could simply say, ouch, or you might say, it's impossible to do that. In my experience, the trick is to go quickly. You want to resolve each player's actions right away and move on to the next person so that everyone in the room is getting this steady stream of information based on what each player is doing. If a player gives a command like go out or exit out, anything along those lines, you would go down here and it says exits are out, page 18, garden path. We're already on page 18, garden path is right here. So now you're on a lush garden path that leads north and south. There's a rose bush here. There is a cottage here. And that's basically how the room proceeds, going from area to area, examining it, picking things up, adding it to your inventory, and then using those objects on other things to try and bypass restrictions and get to some objective at the end. The first adventure does have at least one dirty trick, which is that there is an item that you need in order to solve the adventure, but it starts out in your inventory, and you won't know that it even exists unless someone says inventory, and then you can read out what they're carrying, and then they'll know that they have it. It does say here that if the group is totally new, you can add that object to the description of the cottage at the beginning so that they can pick it up and they won't have to figure that out. There are no hit points in this game. If you simply screw up too badly, then you are dead and the game ends. For example, you might meet the troll here, that it's on the drawbridge of Action Castle, and it gives you 3 turns, 3 different commands that the players can give. And after 3 commands, I usually narrate the troll moving slowly closer and closer to them. If they haven't done anything and they're still standing there, the troll simply kills them. Game over. At that point, you can simply load the game again back at the start of the adventure, unless, of course, the players have thought to say the word save, at which point you jump to that save state. Especially when it comes to talking to different NPCs, it can be very tempting to want to improv things that they say, and I've tried to do that at times, but I think in the long run, it's better to avoid doing that and really double down on the fact that you are a script with a limited number of things that you can respond to. If the players are trying to talk to this NPC and they really start getting off in the weeds, you can simply say things like, she doesn't want to talk to you about that. One of the things is that there is a scoring system. So as the players go through the adventure, you can keep track of how many places that they've been to, what items they picked up, and any achievements that they've got, and this will give them bonus points, with the 100 being the best number, being a perfect score. I recommend that you keep track of all this in your head so you can spit out the score to the players if they ever type in the word score or if their game ends. I find that very difficult to do. So if you wanted to do this, I would probably have a little sheet of paper like this where I could check things off and keep track of it that way. The advantage of keeping score means that it's a little bit fun when the players die and you say, you have died. Score is 55. They think, oh, 55, what did we miss? There must be a whole bunch of other things that we could have interacted with that we didn't. There's a whole bunch of other adventures in here as well. We have Action Castle number 2. And there is Action Castle 3 as well, which is mostly a dungeon adventure. There's Blackboard Jungle, which takes place in a school. There's Danger Town Beatdown, where it's 1987, and Detective Jack Slade and his partner, Jetta Chang, must take down a crime boss and restore law and order. It's all pixel art. You've got Jungle Adventure, which is very Indiana Jones themed. Explore this jungle, try and find the treasure. There's Pumpkin Town, a great adventure to run for your kids on Halloween or on any other spooky occasions. Six Gun Showdown, if you want to do a Western adventure. Space Station, where you awake from suspended animation to find that your ship is under attack. Spooky Manor, where you're just crawling room to room inside this haunted mansion. Z Ward, where you're rescuing your sister from this hospital of horrors. And of course, you could design your own without too much difficulty. It'd be a little bit of writing, but I don't think it would be that hard to do. There's an index at the back where you can look up individual locations, although I don't know if that's really necessary since it's quite well referenced on a page-by-page basis. While not strictly speaking an RPG, Parsley is, I guess, RPG adjacent and succeeds as a fun game on a whole bunch of different levels. One of the best things about it is that it provides this RPG-like experience that requires almost no prep. You just have to, I would read the adventure ahead of time, just so you know generally what's going on and how things are related. But you can jump in and run a whole room full of people through this, no problem in an evening. No one needs to bring dice or pencils or paper. They just sit around and have a great time as they try and explore this weird landscape and solve all the puzzles. I think it's really great for people who love the puzzle solving and exploration aspects of role-playing games, and maybe not so much the detailed rules or combat or social interaction of them. And for people who are into party games and things like escape rooms, this can be a great way to start luring them into the RPG side of gaming. Now, I picked up this book a while back at Gen Con, and I went and looked online today, and unfortunately it seems like it's out of print. It's hard to find physical copies anymore. Fortunately, the PDFs are still easily available, and I will link to those down below. One nice thing is that if you just have the PDF, it's still quite easy to run the game, especially if you have it on a laptop or like on a tablet, because you just need to be able to flip back and forth between pages, and that's all you need to be able to just go. I have seen things from the author mentioning that he has some plans to start releasing more adventures, and possibly even these adventures, in a more zine-like or pamphlet-like format. I don't know when that's going to happen though, or how far along that project is, but I will make sure to let people know in my newsletter if that happens. In any case, thanks for watching everybody, and I'll see you next time.